All right. I am Kathi Kellenberger, and I work for Redgate Software. The most important thing to know about me is that I'm a lifelong learner and teacher. You may have heard about the set of features introduced in SQL Server 2017 and 2019 called Intelligent Query Processing. And today I'm going to focus on one in particular, T-SQL Scalar UDF inlining. Now, when I was a consultant, Scalar UDFs were a big red flag for me. There was one case in which a couple of indexes and undoing a bunch of nested Scalar UDFs, we were able to get the performance of the script from an hour down to under a minute. So these Scalar UDFs can really be a problem. So in 2019, Microsoft has added this feature to refactor some, not all, but some UDFs into a relational expression, which means if it's, for example, let's say a mathematical formula, under the covers, it's just like taking that formula and adding it into the select instead of calling that UDF. Or if your UDF runs a query, it's like taking that code and making it a join instead of calling the UDF. This was introduced in 2019, as you probably saw on the previous slide. And the idea is that instead of calling that function over and over and over for every row in the data set, it can turn that into a set-based query. In some cases, UDFs can keep parallel plans from being used, and where those are beneficial, if the UDF qualifies, we'll get that parallel plan. So that's another benefit. Performance can be drastically improved by this feature, and really the benefit is you don't have to change code to take advantage of this. However, there are lots and lots and lots, many limitations. It's not every UDF. And there's also been quite a few bugs in this feature when it was released, and Microsoft has introduced several patches to fix these in the cumulative updates. My last slide is just some resources. You can find the article written by Microsoft, and also you can read an article on Simple Talk about this feature as well. I want to pull over this document that I just linked to. I'm not going to go through this, but just look at all of the things, all of the requirements for this to work. So it's not going to work for everything. So what I'm going to do is switch over to my code and imagine that you work for the AdventureWorks company and you're running SQL Server 2017. So to simulate that, I'm actually running 2019, but to simulate that, I'm going to play with this compatibility level and switch it back and forth. And I'm also going to throw the results away. I don't care about the results in any of my queries here that I'm going to run. So I've got this formula that I got from the accounting department about markup. And I'm running it against a decent sized table, and it should only take a couple seconds to run. And this is a formula that we use all the time at AdventureWorks. We use it in a bunch of different queries, a bunch of different apps. And it doesn't cause any problems, right? But we decide that since we use it so often, we're going to go ahead and create a function instead of the formula. okay? Because we use it so many places, it might be a good idea to encapsulate this in a UDF. In case we need to tweak this formula, we'd only have to change one place. So we go back to our code and replace the formula with a call to the function. Now this one, the formula is about the same length as calling the UDF, but in some cases cannot catch up. Okay, let me turn, I wanted to have this running. It's not letting me. Okay. This is just a call from before when it called it over and over and over. Is it running? Oh, it is running. No, it is live. Okay, so you can see over here that it is running over and over and over, calling that. And I'm just going to kill it because it will run for up to a minute. The only thing I did was encapsulate that formula, that simple formula, into a UDF, and we've got that problem. Just by upgrading to SQL Server 2019, I can get back to that really great performance. And this should only take a couple of seconds to run, and it did. So now I'm getting the same performance that I got before whenever I use just the formula itself. I can also take advantage of this from functions that I'm going to, let's see, here's a function that calls the order header table and order detail table. I'm going to switch back to 2017 and I'm going to run a query that uses this new function. And what I really want to show you, a couple of things. I want to show you the execution plan. All I see here is the product table when I know that I've called a couple other tables. And if this live data thing is working, oh, it didn't have it on. Let's see. I didn't have any problems with that thing before, but all of a sudden it's giving me lots of issues. I'm going to run that, and again, and there we go. We can see that we're calling that query over and over and over. If I upgrade to SQL Server 2019 and run the query, now I get the execution, the real execution plan that I would expect to see. It's much more complicated, but it's showing me the truth. It's not lying to me. It can also work with conditional logic. Here's one that's got an if and also the same query eventually. And I'm still in 2019 mode, but if I run this, and this is the call to the one with the if I run this and take a look at the execution plan, I can see that it has been inlined. I'll show you a couple of the limitations. If you have anything that returns a date, this one uses the getDate function. There's one. I'm not going to run queries with it. And also here's another one that won't work. The UDF works, it just can't be inlined. That has a loop in it. Let's change that to alter. There we go. Create or alter. All right, so I'm not going to check those, but what I'm going to do is run this little query here that will tell me whether my function is inlineable or not. So my first one where it just had a query, yes, and you saw that it worked. Where I had the if, also is inlineable. You saw that it worked. But the one with the getDate and the one with the loop, those are not inlineable. You can control this feature by several different means. You saw me turning it off and on just by changing the compatibility mode of the database. So by I'm sorry, let me grab this note here, not the code. I've turned the compatibility mode of the database from 2017 to 2019. That turns all of the features from 2019 off or on. I can also say I don't want one particular intelligent query processing feature. So there is a database property that you can turn off and on. Another thing you can do if you find you've got a problem with one particular query, you can add a query hint to disable that particular feature. Another thing that you can do is in your, let's say you really have a problem, we didn't have a problem with this one. Let's say we really had a problem with this particular one. We can specify in the definition with inline on or off. And this is something I just learned recently. So I'm wondering if Microsoft added this with one of the cumulative updates. So really, that's all I've got. I feel like I went through it really, really fast.